You
Yeah, that's
are.
right.
Why don't we go
I
ahead and
am
move on
next.
and then we'll have you answer that. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. There's not much in my bio here, but I'm Ann Bayerkohler, and I graduated in August of 2021 with Cindy. She was in my cohort, and we worked closely together on a number of projects. We actually overlapped in a lot of our courses, and both of us have been adjuncts at Seattle U since. So that was really good. And I do want to point out that I actually presented with Professor DiMarino at at the at a conference, just talking about the MLS and the Capstone itself, and with other law schools. So I think that this is really an important topic, what we're talking about now. I've worked in compliance for a long time, since before I knew what compliance was. I got thrown in. My first role as a director of compliance was in 2014, and I could have used this degree then. I was sad that it did not exist at the time. But that's kind of been my entire career. I was thrown into computers with help desk back in 1998, before the internet was really a thing, and before they called it the cloud. I've been doing that a lot. So when I started looking at my capstone, it was really difficult because I had already been working in all of these areas of compliance. And as a compliance director, and I was currently working at an organization that was known for compliance auditing. So I audited the auditors of many frameworks, mostly around information technology, and that crosses over into the payment card industry and all those things. So I was thinking, what possibly could I do that wouldn't overlap with my business? And at that point, data privacy was really starting to build in the United States. GDPR was already out, but I started with this program in September of 2019, and we rolled right into the pandemic. So just before I graduated, what I was mostly concerned with as a mother, I have two children, but one of them, she turned 13 in January of this year. So I actually tried to go through this process of my capstone myself as a parent. But what I noticed was a lot of data was being stored about students, and the inspiration really around the pandemic and looking at data privacy from a perspective not related to my work was actually this right here, with Google Classroom. The first thing I noticed, luckily we have Apple, and Apple is known for being on the forefront of privacy, and it required its applications to actually say what they're doing with the data. And if you notice, this is Google Classroom. So this is for students. This is for everyone, K through 12th grade. And they were actually collecting geolocation data on our children. And nothing against Google, though you will hear me talk about Google if you're in my, if you come to my house. I actually started going through their privacy, and I printed them out, and it's a binder this thick, because it's a link to the privacy page, and then the privacy pages have links, and then they have sublinks. And as a parent, what you're doing is you just want your kid to go to school. And in some areas, what we had is we actually had vans, because we're actually dead zones where students did not have internet access. So companies would drive vans out, and they would provide that internet access that the parents maybe could not provide for them. And I started to think, wow, those parents, I know from having worked as a teacher in inner city Houston, that sometimes those parents are working 3 jobs. They're not going to read the privacy pages this thick. I didn't want to do it. I did it for school. So when you look at that, you just want to get your kid on board, and you just click yes. And I agree to these privacy things, and you don't realize what you're giving up when you do that. So the other thing to notice is right there, that big circle, the data not linked to you. Location was linked to the child, and the child is under 13. So where is that data going? I started really analyzing, why was the geolocation of my child linked directly to them? Why wasn't it put into the diagnostics and not linked to my location? And you're thinking about all of the things in COPPA. The two P's in COPPA are privacy and protection. So how are we protecting our children, and what can we do as parents, particularly in the pandemic? So if you skip to the next slide, I too created a website. It was called Privacy Hoarder. It has since fallen off the internet. I did not maintain it for more than 2 years, just because it was a lot to maintain personally. I worked with Professor Kotha as my stakeholder, and she actually has been working in privacy before privacy became an issue as well. And so she helped me narrow, again, that focus of like, do I focus on the vans that are driving in the neighborhood? Do I focus on the applications we're using on our phones? Do I focus on the kids themselves? Do I focus on the parents? And she really kind of helped me. She helped me to narrow it and say, what are you trying to present? What are you trying to get at? And for me, it was really, how do I get other parents to know, to give this information to them? And that's where the idea of the website came out. So I created, just basically through all of my research, a website where you could do something like going out to Opt Out Easy, which is great. It's a browser extension. There are a couple of places where you could just say, I opt out of you collecting my data. I started presenting things for parents so that they could go through and delete the data. I do want to say, I'm going to give, even though this is a private, my final deliverable, I have really paid attention to what's been going on in the COPPA space, even though that has nothing to do with my job. I'm going to drop into the chat if I can do it. And it doesn't seem to want to let me. I'm not sure why. Let me see. The IAPP, I'm a member of the International Association for Privacy Professionals, and they actually just went through on February 1st, had a webinar where they went through the proposed COPPA changes. One of the things I'm most concerned about is the age of the child. My daughter is 13. What I keep telling people is I also studied brain theory a long time ago when I was learning how to teach. And your frontal lobe, where you're making your decisions, it's not developed until you're in your 20s. So why in the United States do we think in a digital era that 13 is the cutoff? My daughter is brilliant, and she makes good choices, and she's lovely, and I trust her. But when privacy is always based in trust, that you have the trust factor actually that's built into some of the audits that you do with like a SOC 2 Type 2. They look at trust as a trust principles, like, can a consumer trust the data? I look at it as like, can I trust you with my data? Anytime I look at as an organization, can I trust you? So all of that is to say is that we are updating and redoing COPPA. There are some proposed changes. Age is not built into that. We're in a world where social media, and they have some things that are that the biggest thing that has concerned me lately is the sextortion claims, because it actually causes, there have been a number of children who have committed suicide because of what has been happening on the internet. So with your children, what I did with this was just to say, look, right before your child turns 13, go and delete all of their data. Ask all of these organizations to delete whatever your child has done online. And when my daughter was turning 13 in December, even though I did all of this research, it was difficult for me to do it. Even though I created this website and said, here are all these links to all of the things, it was difficult to me for a couple of reasons. Is one, my daughter wanted to keep all of her information on Roblox. She didn't want me to have that data deleted because she had built up a world in this, which is cool. It's this cool teaching thing that she's doing, but you know, she also had Pokemon Go, but that has location. It has a geolocation factor as well, and then there are things like FERPA where you can't actually the educational data that the schools need to keep. So you couldn't delete a lot of these things. And so how do you go to something like Google Classroom or to an organization like the school itself and ask them to delete data for your child, because there's not necessarily a direct link between Google Classroom and you as the parent. It's Google Classroom and the agreement between the school district and how the school district uses the tool. So it was a lot more complicated than I thought. I will say that my work in privacy ended up where at the cybersecurity consulting firm I was then working at, I moved into corporate security directly under the chief legal officer, and I served as the data protection officer and was able to actually go to DC and attend the IAPP conference there. I met my state's which I'm very proud of. I live in Colorado, and I met my attorney general there and had a conversation about not only the privacy laws but enforcement of those privacy laws. And if you've been watching C-SPAN like I do, like a nerd, we've had a lot of this has actually gone to Congress. We've had social media organizations and tech organizations actually answering to our congressional leadership about what they're doing to protect children online. And so it is something that I'm personally passionate about, and it also crossed over into my own work. I am now the global compliance director for a CDN. It's that's a content delivery network. So we make sure you get all of that lovely streaming that you want. So as a content delivery network, we have to care about what content is being delivered, what flows over our data centers and what flows over our POPs or points of presence. So we're doing a lot of third-party risk management, enterprise risk management on how that data is flowing and what data is actually going across our network. And I report up to the CISO, who reports to chief legal, and I work with our data privacy officer, even though I'm focused in these other areas of risk. So I think that's really all I have for you. I know I'm rambling, but
No,
this project here really rolled into a lot for me. It was personal, and then it also rolled into my professional life eventually. Privacy kind of just trickles in everywhere.
that's
I think there's
fantastic.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
is there
is
one more slide?
one
Yeah,
more slide of
these
links.
these are all of the links that I had included online, and these are being updated right now with the what the FTC is proposing. And I would just suggest to all of you, if you're not a parent today, maybe you've previously been a parent of a child under 18, or you just know a child, this is something that you should all be paying attention to, because it does have ramifications in their personal lives. I had heard of a woman who was working at a magazine. She's in her 20s working at a magazine, and something that she had posted online when she was 11 came back up, and everyone just said, wow, that sounded I think it was racist is what it was. That post sounded racist. So something she had posted when she was 11 caused her to lose her job when she was an
Oh,
adult. And if you think about the changes that you go through from 11 to 25, and then from 25 to 45, from now I'm moving into my 50s. When you start to see those things, I would not want anything I did when I was 11 to come back to my employer. So these things are very important. We have to have the ability to delete the data. We have to have the ability as a parent to follow the data. We need to have that protection and enforcement as well as the privacy piece. So that all culminated in the website I had. And then, yeah, that's where I am. So if anyone has any
yeah.
questions?
Well, two notes. I am working on putting all of these links into the chat so that everyone can grab them from there. And if you mentioned another link. If you want to send that to me, I can also put that in the chat and send it out.
Yeah, sure.
Um, yeah, thank you so much. And I definitely will open it up to questions. I do want to give Cindy, she's back with us, an opportunity to answer the question around kind of like dancing that line between like, the capstone being adjacent to work product, but also can't overlap with work product. And I know, Anne, you had mentioned that this, because yours kind of walked that line, also maybe both of you want to kind of speak to that a little bit. So
Yeah, sure. This is Cindy. Sorry, Clay, I lost power, so I'm on my cell phone now.
Oh,
So yeah, what my project was very helpful for my current employer, as well as, like I had mentioned, some credit unions and banks as well. But it really just helps kind of like focus your ideas and your accountability, and so we can get, your investors know that you are, you know on the straight and narrow that they wish you to be on, that you have plenty of um, accountability, that you're treating your employees correct. So it's compliance with the conscience, as well as something that you can also use at work. And
oh, yeah. And so, Cindy, what we were talking about when you had dropped was walking that fine line between the education that we are doing here in the MLS program in this final capstone. It couldn't really be a work product for what you're doing at work today, right? So what I know is that you're doing that at the time you were working internal audit, but it wasn't necessarily ESG. Is that right? Like you
that's
didn't have
correct.
any, yeah. So even though it was kind of parallel, your project was parallel to what you were doing, such as mine, privacy was parallel to what I was doing. It wasn't, it didn't overlap in any way of work. Um, but it did end up being something that, because I was so passionate about it, it kind of trickles into everything that we do. And I do want to know, I don't know if you can tell how Cindy and I are kind of going back and forth. We know each other's products because the cohort becomes very close. A lot of us still talk and text, even though we're at different areas of the country. Being part of this cohort really helped me when I have concerns and issues about compliance. I know I can reach out to like Cindy and other folks in my cohort. So just like we're talking about all of these areas of compliance and how they affect businesses, as as a as an employee who's working in that area, I think Danielle mentioned it, is just having, you have the whole SU staff and community that you can reach out to when you get through this program, but also you end up with very personal relationships where you can kind of see their work products and get into those work products as well. So it was a great experience for me. I know that wasn't the question you asked, Kelly, but it was just a really great experience for me to be part of the program and really rolled into to a lot of areas of my life. As I said, it has tentacles that kind of reached out into different areas of my life. So any other questions for me before we move on?
And just great job. You know, I remember I think, and that's just again like maybe one of those network things. Like maybe I messaged you on LinkedIn and I was like, hey, I want to know a little bit, and you sent me the URL for your project, and that was like one of those aha moments as a student. You're like, okay, well, someone else created a website, and again, you saw it as a way to kind of like consolidate, put everything in one spot. Obviously, children's privacy is going to be a huge focus this year as well, as we've seen just in this last week. But just a shameless plug, as you mentioned, the IAPP, just for prospective students, current students, you know, a student membership is what, null? Was it $50 or free? I can't recall. And that will unlock a wealth of so many resources. There's so many webinars. You can join the knowledge nets in your area. So post-graduation too, just want to note, like, it's, you can go to these events, introduce yourself, you know, and everyone is just so welcoming. Whether it's the online community or in person, it's a fantastic organization. And as a student, I wish I would have done it sooner. It really, because it becomes, if I would have been doing that at the same time as some of our coursework, I would have had even more tools at my disposal. And so just encourage those to look at their respective professional organizations and like join into that, you know, as much as you can as you're working on your coursework.
Yeah, the Society for Corporate Compliance and Ethics is also a huge one. They were sending physical magazines, which I'd still love to have a real book in my hand and a real magazine in my hand. And now they've moved to digital magazines, and it made me very sad. I mean, just like recently within the past couple of months. But those organizations I am still a part of, starting in school, and they become much more expensive when you're a compliance professional. But luckily, after getting this degree, I got a promotion. I ended up making more money, so I could afford those professional memberships. It really helped. You know, where it started with this group of but like my cohort, it really did bleed into my professional life, and I'm still constantly reading the Code of Federal Regulations and the different changes that are happening, and watching C-SPAN as people are answering questions to Congress. So it's never ending. The education started, and I received the degree, but it's lifetime learning, I think, and it just starts here. It starts with you finally get the degree, but it just keeps going. I don't think any of us have really stopped learning after the program ended.
For sure.
And I appreciate your insights and your comments. You come with a wealth of experience in privacy. And what I really liked about your project was how it was empowering for consumers, especially parents, right? So in the compliance sphere, you know, we're always trying to think, you know, our training, if we train employees about what the policies and procedures are, that's a big step. If we empower them to speak up when they see something wrong, you know, that's also a very big step to create that culture of compliance. So I guess the issue or the challenge that I have is, how do we deal with employees that we may empower them, but they're still lackadaisical. They still have apathy towards compliance. And this even applies, I think, to your project. You know, we like to think that many parents really are involved in the education of their kids, but there are some parents in our society that are truly hands off with their kids. You know, they really are not paying attention to what the kids are doing online. How do we get to kind of motivate those kinds of parents or those kinds of employees that are lackadaisical or otherwise apathetic to the tools that we're giving them
Well,
in a compliance sphere?
yeah, I think that's a really good question. We need to make it easier. And someone had talked about EBITDA earlier, about just like the when I talk to top management, executive leadership, it's a very different conversation from I would what I call boots on the ground, the people who are doing the actual work in an organization or a business. And the I always start with policies and procedures. We move into training. I do a big compliance month. It used to be compliance week, and then I realized compliance was just too big. So we do a compliance month because it's an investment an organization has to make. And I will tell you that anytime you use the word investment, the company just says, whoa, 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 that's not in our budget. You're telling me we want to do 40 hours of compliance training. Do you know how much that is worth hourly for every employee throughout an organization? So you have to kind of think about those things, and it's never perfect, but making it easier, shorter chunks of information. I think people's attention span, I don't know, over the past decade or so, people's attention span has really shortened to TikToks. And if we can start reaching people where they're at, I guess is what I'm saying, and making it easier for them, using the example of all of the privacy pieces of that application I was talking about earlier, it shouldn't be that hard. It should not be that much information. And you're asking people because it's this little legal blurb that just says you agree, and like I said, as a parent, you don't have time to go through that. You're busy working. Even if you have one job and a parent, and being a parent, that's a lot. And then you're also managing other relationships and work and school and maybe 3 jobs. It shouldn't be this hard. So I actually propose that it should be a lot easier. It should be a lot easier to find these things. I think those proposals are coming up, really driven by GDPR coming out of the UK in the same way that ESG is. The modern, I was thinking about this when Margot was talking about the 2017 Modern Slavery Act. I didn't think that was something that we would have to discuss in 2023, but that is something that we talk about in compliance is, are we complying with this law out of the UK? And just saying like, we don't engage with companies that, work with slavery. Like these are things that should be very easy, and yet it's buried in legislation, and it's buried in the education we give your employees. So we just have to make it easier. And I think that's our burden that we carry as compliance professionals. If we care about it, we've got to make it to people. And I just look at it from an education perspective is I think I'm constantly educating people and hoping that all you can do is hope that something clicks and that it's got to, we've got to meet them where they are, whoever they are, whether it's top management, boots on the ground, or just the community as a whole.
Yeah. So what I liked about your response just very quickly was that you didn't mention the hammer, right? You really mentioned about the communication piece that is so very important. And I think that as compliance professionals, we really need to keep that top of mind because it's easier for us to resort to the hammer, right? But the difficult part is really communicating them and motivating.